while all the champions are out there going, yay, women, we have a woman head of the IOC. Bruh, it's the same fucking power structure as it was before. So I think we should be on high alert.
Welcome to Burn It All Down, the feminist sports podcast you need. I'm Amira Rose Davis, and I'm here with my co-hosts,
Jessica Luther,
Shireen Ahmed,
Lindsay Gibbs,
Brenda Elsie.
And on this episode, we are going to be talking about the Winter Olympics.
Wow. It does feel like we should have music.
Yeah.
Like timpanis and tubas or something.
Oh,
tubas.
yes. All of that, yes.
But first, we have big news. We have officially kicked off our Kickstarter. We want to bring Burn It All Down back for a new season, but we can't do that without your help. Over the first 5 years that we did this podcast, we didn't get paid very much, and it wasn't very financially sustainable for us to do that every week. But now we want to come back, and we're hoping that our flamethrowers can help us come back at such a critical time. So this is what we're doing. If we hit our Kickstarter goal of $10,000, that will pay for 3 new episodes of Biad this year. But we would love to come back for even longer than that, if we can raise the money. So there's 2 things you can do for us to help us reach these goals. First, you can support our Kickstarter that's live right now. The link is in the show description. The earlier you give us our support, the better. Kickstarter has an algorithm, and it really is favorable when you hit your goal quickly. So the quicker we hit our goal, the more likely it is that we can keep this project going. We've also planned a couple fun rewards. Some of them are limited and very timely, including an invitation to a celebratory happy hour with us at the end of the Kickstarter, or having your name read as a torchbearer on an upcoming episode. The second thing you can do is to spread the word. If you know anyone who wants to support independent feminist media, or any sports fans who could use this show in their life, please share the Kickstarter with them today. Share us on all platforms, tag us, spread the word. The more eyes on our Kickstarter, the more episodes we can bring to you. Again, the link is right there in our description. Please visit our Kickstarter and help us bring Biad back in 2026.
We're having a happy hour? That's amazing. I want to come.
Mm-hmm. You're invited.
Okay, I think you're invited.
If you contribute to the Kickstarter.
So, apparently, it's time for the Winter Olympics. Now, I'm not going to lie.
Surprise!
They kind of snuck up on me. Maybe they snuck up on y'all, too. But it is 2026, apparently. And that does make it a Winter Olympic year. So on February 6th, the Winter Olympics will kick off in Milano Cortina. And, you know, Winter Olympics always brings, well, it's cold, but also some of the funnest, most random sports for us. We always enjoy learning about what sports will be at the Winter Olympics, but also it is the Olympics. It's still a mega event. So, of course, before we get into a preview of what to expect at the Winter Games, we had to take a moment to get a lay of the land, to see what's been going on, the problems, the pitfalls, the possibilities, and all of the pettiness that comes with mega sporting events. So today, we are going to dive in to storylines that you might have missed and that will help get you prepared for the Winter Olympics in 2026. Jessica, can you kick us off? What should we know about the Winter Olympics? Are there new stories or same old stories?
Same old stories, Amira. So in December, days before Christmas, Reuters reported that there were concerns that the climate, of all things, was not going to cooperate with the games. It's been unseasonably warm in Italy. So the president of the International Ski and Snowboard Federation, the FIS, expressed concerns about there not being enough snow on the ground. At the time, the downhill course had no snow on it. And while there were snowmaking machines, they would do those at night and then would melt during the day. The president of the FIS made clear that while he was specifically worried about the Milano Cortina Olympics, that this was a bigger problem facing the sport as climate change continues. And there was actually a recent piece by Megan Williams at the CBC that discusses the overall issue of climate change and the Olympics, and it features friend of the pod, Dr. Madeline Orr, who reacted to the sustainability and impact director for the upcoming Winter Games, saying that the Olympics will, once again, be an opportunity to raise awareness about climate change. Or responded to this saying, quote, "I find it kind of comical that raising awareness among fans is the goal of an event with budgets this big. The plan with the 2010 Vancouver Olympics was raising awareness on climate change. I mean, what are we doing? It's 2026. As for the snow, there is an update since the middle of December. In early January, some concerns were alleviated when temperatures started to drop across the Italian Alps, including on that downhill course in Bormio. The president of the FIS said of this change, quote, "We are in the hands of the gods, but you also need resources to make snow, and the capabilities are available here. So from that perspective, things look good. We'll see." Okay, so one more regular old Olympics issue. The games are over budget. In April of last year, this was like the latest update I could find. So April of 2025, the organizers announced that the games would cost close to 1.7 billion euros, which is about 100 million euro more than they had said previously. But according to ESPN, that 1.7 billion number didn't include the construction of venues like the sliding center or the hockey arena, which together will cost another 418 million euro. This isn't anywhere near the wildly corrupt Russian Olympics in Sochi that were close to $51 billion, or even Beijing's $4 billion in 2022. But obviously, this is a chronic problem with these mega events. They always promise that they're going to cost less than they end up being.
It's so wild. Like, awareness has been raised. We are aware.
There's no snow on the mountain. We're
There's
aware.
No snow. Awareness, level 10. Like, we're here. Yeah, absolutely. These are, very much in line with a lot of issues that we're seeing across sport and across mega events, climate change, budget issues. And of course, we also have labor concerns. So even though, as Jess pointed out, the temperatures have been higher than anticipated, they're also still in many construction sites quite cold. And sadly, at one mountain resort of Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is where curling, sliding, and women's alpine skiing will be held, back in January, a construction worker actually passed away overnight. There is a call in Italy for a full investigation. The Olympic organizers immediately said the worker died of a heart attack, but there's at least enough questions to do a full investigation, especially considering that temperatures that night plunged to a minus 10.4 degrees Fahrenheit. And so we're still waiting to see what the investigation shows about the cause of death. But there was at least enough concern around the temperature and around the working conditions overnight where he was laboring that is warranting a full investigation. So it's just something that we're monitoring. It takes actual labor to build these facilities. And as we know from mega events in the past, that can come on with the blood, sweat, and tears, literally, of laboring people that don't always get talked about when we're talking about the spectacle. So, these are things that are very familiar, but they're still happening at the Winter Games. Shireen, what's going on with some facilities?
So I just wanted to talk for a second about para facilities, because I know we're talking about, the Olympics and the paras will follow. But it's really important to note that this was supposed to be, in an interview, Andrew Parsons, who is head of the International Paralympic Committee, had said that these Olympics were going to be the most accessible ever. Like, every Olympics or Paralympics are going to be the most something, right? Like, Paris was gender equity, and then we debunked a lot of that, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the thing is,
spoiler alert for my segment, Shireen. Gosh, don't.
Sorry. Spoiler. I'm still thinking about the happy hour. All of this to say is that truly the arena that's supposed to host the opening ceremonies of the Paralympics is stated to be one of the most accessible stadiums ever in history of Olympics or Paralympics, which is amazing. However, it is so far from the sites, because that's one of the problems with Winter Paralympics or Olympics, is that a lot of the para-athletes won't actually be there. So they'll be like on Zoom waving their flags. So at the same time that you're like, oh, that's amazing, they're not actually going to be there. So it's sort of feeling like, and there's ways in which I do have to say that on some of the tracks, the para athletes and the para sport will be held on the same tracks as the Olympics, which is actually important. My colleague at CBC, Miles Dichter, wrote about this. And a Canadian Paralympian named Natalie Wilkie is really going to, she was talking about how important that is. The Nordic World Ski Championships and the para events will be the same places as able-body events. So there's ways in which this is really important, and there's parity in certain ways. It's not like the paras are usually considered an afterthought. So they're trying to not make that happen. However, if you're going to build a building for para athletes that it's so amazing for them to attend, wouldn't it be cool if they could actually be there? I don't know. I'm not like an architect or anything like that. I was just a planner, but it would just make sense. So that's something that I found, and we'll keep our eyes on it, and we'll bring you more as the reporting becomes, sort of more clear. And these were preliminary reports. So I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention that I found bizarre, to say the least.
For sure, and you're absolutely right that like every games is a new this game ever, the most sustainable, most accessible, most, gender equitable, as you mentioned. And it also makes me think like the worst hate mail I've ever received is for a 10-minute interview I did once that was interviewing me about the Olympic Games. It must have been 4 years ago. That was like the most diverse Olympic Games ever, or that we were sending from the United States the most diverse Winter Olympic team. And I was like, yeah, it is. And it's also still like 93.5% white. And that was the worst hate mail. They mailed a letter with a stamp, and stamps cost money now. I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing. So anyways.
Didn't stamps always cost money?
Yeah, but I mean like real money.
Oh, okay.
Like they're not like 12 cents anymore. I was like, who would waste a whole stamp and a letter to mail me a hate message about the fact that the U.S. Olympic team was 93.5% white? It just feels like, I say a lot of things you can be mad about. That just didn't really feel like a thing. But it did make me think about all of the most this ever. And as Lindsay said, we do indeed here at Burn It All Down have yet another segment framed around tracking how equitable the games really are when it comes to gender. So, Brenda, get us going. How is gender equity looking like at the 2026 Winter Olympics?
Well, let's just start with one of the really lauded banners of this Olympics, which is it has its first woman as president of the International Olympic Committee and the first African, Kirsty Coventry. So she took over earlier last year, and this has been touted as really important, a groundbreaking, path-breaking. But we shouldn't be surprised that it comes with a lot of questions, a lot of ellipses, ... Coventry is Africa's most decorated Olympian of all time. She won 7 medals across 2004 Athens Games, 2008 Beijing. She has been the head of IOC's Athletes Commission, so she's been in this system for a long time and definitely has been gunning for this job. It is a result, in part, of progress because if you think about it, the IOC's women representation on its commission has doubled over the last 12 years. That's just good. That's a good fact, right? At the same time, Coventry is known within Zimbabwe as its Minister of Sports for really not wanting to cause trouble with its authoritarian leaders, including Emerson Mnangagwa, who took over in a coup during her tenure. And she's been very careful not to kind of ruffle any of those feathers. A lot of people have critiqued her job as Ministry of Sport because the Zimbabwean Football Association was actually suspended during that time because of government interference, and its aquatic center has been rendered unusable. Ironic, given that she is a swimmer. She went to Auburn University where she trained most of the time, so perhaps she wasn't that in tune with the grassroots problems of Zimbabwean swimmers. But I don't know. We really don't know, right? Because jury's kind of out. She has defended her relationships with these men in power that are questionable by saying, quote, I don't believe you can really create change if you don't have a seat at the table, end of quote, which in itself sounds okay, but maybe not okay depending on your table and your seat. So I'm going to throw it to Shireen for some other questions about Coventry, but it's something that gives you pause to celebrate quite yet.
Thanks, Bren. I just wanted to point out when Bren said she's an African woman, I want to establish that she's white, first of all, because I think that's relevant. And secondly, one thing that bothers me is anytime I hear someone set up a committee about protecting the female category, I get stressed because that's exactly what's happened under Coventry. She's set up like a working group. I don't care if it's a committee or a working group. When you phrase shit like that, that's what it means. It's going to be an attack on trans athletes. And this was reported in December from the Associated Press, is that there will be a target to detail a new policy on eligibility in women's sports. So as much as we're happy to have a woman in power, she's a white woman from an African nation with a lot of power, and that doesn't comfort me. So while all the champions are out there going, yay, women, we have a woman head of the IOC, bruh, it's the same fucking power structure as it was before. So I think we should be on high alert to see what's coming forth, because we know the ways in which the world is pushing to ban trans athletes. And if this happens at the IOC, like I wouldn't put it past anybody at this point.
Yeah, it's obviously where things are headed across the board. And, you know, we can't speak out enough against it and against what these sports are doing and what the way that leadership has cowered in the face of transphobia and transphobes. You know, just kind of going into these claims that I think the official press release said the Milano Cortina Olympics is the most gender-balanced winter games in history, which I don't know. I don't find that rah wording. But, I mean, there is undoubtedly some progress here. In Beijing was 44.7% of the athletes were women. Now we're up to 47%. 12 of the 16 disciplines will be fully gender balanced in athlete numbers. This is an increase from Beijing in 2022. There's a couple of individual sports where you're seeing progress. For instance, in cross-country skiing, you're going to see women and men ski the same distances this year. It's not going to be arbitrarily less just because women have uteruses or something. Like,
What an idea.
What an idea.
Wow.
In ski jumping.
2026.
2026. But there's some caveats coming. Ski jumping, which of course debuted in the Olympics in 2014 for women, and it's long been an event and a staple of the games for the men. But women for the past few games have only been able to compete on the normal hill and not on the large hill. This year they will be able to compete on the large hill, which is great, but there's no women's team event like there is for the men in ski jumping. So it's great that women will be able to compete on the large hill, but of course they will not. It's not fully equitable because they don't have a women's team event. And it seems like there's just all these caveats. There's still a couple of sports, biathlon and speed skating and short track, where the women arbitrarily have distances that are shorter than the men's distances that they compete in. And of course, Nordic combined still has no women competing. That is a male-only discipline. So these are pretty important asterisks to this celebration of gender equity, especially when this is fixable. You know, like all you got to do is open up the events. There's all this talk about there aren't enough women competing in this event in order to make it gender balanced. But we know that the federations are not going to put resources into the women's events if they're not in the Olympics. I also just want to add, there's also discrepancy in bobsled where there's 2-man and 2-woman. There's some relay events, but then there's 4-man and then monobob for the women. So women do not have a 4-woman event. So that's another place that it would be a really easy fix if we really wanted to.
Yeah, I don't like that one. I want 4 women doing the bobsled.
Same.
Jeez.
I just want to remind everybody that from 1968 up until 98, athletes were given cards that look like these to verify their gender. And you can see this was clipped on to an ID. It was literally carried around. This is from Nagano in 1998. You can see that it has a loophole that literally athletes would carry around to verify their gender. And of course, by gender verification, they're only policing they're not looking for you to prove that you're a man, right? And also, the range of those verification tests ranged from really invasive, like parades in front of panels where you were poked and prodded, to more kind of DNA invasive swabs in that nature. But 1998, which is when I was 10, right, is athletes were still carrying around. I am not that old.
I was like
but I am
literally, I think I was pregnant. I think I was pregnant.
Well, I was 10, but athletes at Nagano were still carrying around these cards. And so I think especially if you are like a younger millennial or Gen Z and you're listening to this and it feels like so distant, or that these gender panels feel like the first time, it's such a rollback, it's such a return. And so every time, even like when we're talking about the like gender equity progress here and we're highlighting the gaps, it's not just the gaps of perceived progress, it's also the actual steps backwards that are also being made in real time as well. Bren?
Right. So, Lindsay, those are pretty damning statistics about the different sports, given the fact that it's being really celebrated as an equitable Olympics, right? As Amira said earlier, this could have been, the same numbers we've had decades ago. I do want to point out that Amy Bass, friend of the show for the Women's Sports Foundation, did an exhaustive report with her team that you can download for free on the Women's Sports Foundation website. And they've tracked a lot of these statistics over time and done pretty intense research. Two other components of gender inequity that are included in that report are about leadership beyond the presidency of the IOC to coaching and funding. So even in the United States context, which is very good compared to other parts of the world, there are less than 25%, and in some cases, less than 20% of head coaching positions that are staffed by women. Internationally, that can look terrible. In the Asian confederations overall, less than 5% of head coaching jobs are held by women. And on top of that, for example, the U.S. Olympic Committee has awarded Coach of the Year to highlight the best coaches in the Olympics. And a woman won just once, and she had to share it with Gino from UConn. So it was that woman, I should mention, is Amy Borman, the artistic gymnastics coach. The U.S. Paralympic situation is not better. In fact, it's a little bit worse. And one other thing I just wanted to highlight quickly from that report, male athletes received 30% more of the Olympic Solidarity scholarships than women, and there has not been an explanation as to why that is the case.
Jesus.
So my news isn't any better, or my update on the hockey, the ice hockey rink. So the Santa Giulia Arena in Milano was supposed to be completed. And although the Olympics start on the 6th, the women's hockey tournament actually starts on the 5th. So the first game is on the 5th. And the Santa Giulia ice hockey arena will not be completed. So it's reported that the ice will be done, the dressing rooms, the ice surface will be done, the practice facilities and dressing rooms will be complete. And I'm like, so the stands won't be completed. I'm hoping the roof is done. So there's ways in which this won't be completed. And it's almost like it was anticipated that as long as it's ready for the men's tournament to start, it'll all be good. In the meantime, the women's hockey tournament is going to be one of the most watched, one of the most highly anticipated events in the Olympics. And the fact that this isn't done is not great. The IIHF's president, Luc Tardif, had mentioned this and talked about this. This was reported on January 7th earlier by multiple media outlets. Like, this is what's happening. And my colleague, Chris Jones, is actually there. And we have a little bit of a 15-second clip of him talking about it when he's actually there on the ground.
I was standing outside that hockey arena. It's not going to get finished. So that's bad. Not ideal. But allegedly, the ice and the practice facilities and the dressing rooms, all the things that the athletes will use, are finished and ready to go.
Wow. So, for those keeping score at home, let's go through our mega event checklist. Climate change issues, budget issues, sprinkle of racism, sexism at its finest. So what are we... Oh, yeah. Politics. What is happening politically around these games, Jessica?
Well, let me tell you, these people are snorting their own farts and then telling us all that it smells really good. Like, sometimes I just can't believe what it is they're willing to say out loud. So in December, the president of Italy, Sergio Mattarella, said that he hoped the Olympics truce would, quote, mark the end of abuse of power. He went on, quote, let the aggression and barbarism stop. We hope that the Olympic truce will be renewed. The sign of peace that the Olympics bring will be clear and visible in every corner of the world. So this truce is supposed to be in effect from a week before the Olympics start until a week after the end of the Paralympics. The idea is that everyone's going to stop fighting so that athletes and coaches and journalists can safely travel to and from Italy. I don't even know what you say about this. That's... What?
It was like the Greek official who was like, the flames of the Olympic torch will eradicate COVID. Like, the Olympics is made up. Like, this is made up.
Yes.
Like,
they don't care. The aggressive war hawks, that's a Brenda term that I'm adopting, don't give a shit about your stupid Olympic truce. So, the fact that they're even out here saying this stuff, can you imagine doing that? How do these people... live with themselves? But yeah, so the Olympic truce, y'all, it's going to end conflict.
I would say they live very comfortably with themselves.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure they have a lot of luxury to supplement their guilty sentiments. Like, if you pay someone enough to live in love or give them enough power, then they're the concept itself sounds so stupid. I can't even, it's so stupid.
I think they say these things so they can live with themselves. They think saying these things is enough to be something, and it's nothing.
And beyond that, people are actually waiting for the Olympic truce period because then you can do subversive action while everybody's in la la land about the Olympics. How many times have we seen sporting events give cover for military actions precisely because the world is watching the sports? This is a playbook that we're very familiar with. Go look up Russian aggression after the Winter Olympics for the last 3 cycles. It is something that actually runs as a shield to nefarious actions and not as some mythical truce, lay down your arms, kumbaya, we'll all love each other because the Olympic Charter says peace and equality or whatever. We already saw how equality is doing. So why would we think peace is doing any better? Brenda, do you have more on the Olympic truce and the United States?
Well, President of the United States, Donald Trump, didn't want to wait for the truce. In fact, he's hurried up and war-hawked some more than he usually does. The truce is supposed to allow for safe passage of participation. The ancient, kind of concept of it is everybody stop and all of these people can pass safely through these lands and, Donald Trump's realms that he's imagining he may be acquiring. You can just sort of see him. And this has been accepted by the United Nations, which for me, it's the United Nations took time out to actually consider this is troubling in and of itself. They don't have more shit to do right now. But yeah, the United States, which is up there with Russia as and England, British Empire as one of the worst truce breakers, if you wanna frame it that way, continues to be super aggressive and bellicose. So let me just name, besides capturing and kidnapping Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, the Trump administration has threatened Canada, Denmark, Sudan, Nigeria, Iran, Cuba, Mexico, Iraq, Somalia, Syria, Yemen, Colombia, Syria, I put it again, I must have been pissed, Panama, and Nicaragua. So, jokes
And
about
Greenland.
it.
Greenland.
Well, yeah, I put Denmark because I guess they're not really thinking about actually declaring war on Greenland, but instead taking Greenland. But you're right, obviously. Joking about it is used to normalize it. So I want to laugh about how fucking ridiculous it is. And yet every time I laugh about how ridiculous it is, what I'm doing is normalizing something that this president might actually do. So sometimes you have to laugh, and then now he's even ruining laughing for me. Can President Trump go 2 weeks without endangering this truce? I am betting no.
This is
And
so
the United States is
embarrassing.
hosting the next Olympics. So, and the World Cup. So everything's just great.
Yay.
Yay.
Gosh.
Awkward.
Shireen, who else is violating the Olympic truce?
So, I mean, when we see truce, well, like, what do we mean by that? Like, we don't actually mean truthfulness or any type of calm or any type of freedom of expression. Let's not conflate what it actually means. So, as we're about to embark on the Olympics in this journey, the genocide in Gaza hasn't
It
stopped.
means, excuse me, Shireen, it means that barbarism and aggression is going to stop.
Right. Barbarism and
That's
aggression.
straight from the mouth of the Italian president.
The Italian
Of course.
president, or paused conveniently, allegedly. So, in the meantime, there are still people with actual consciences who are protesting stuff, and some of those are actually like anti-genocide protesters. So, you've got people supporting Palestinians that are out there, and Italian police, and this happened in December, they arrested and stopped protesters who were going to potentially disrupt the Olympic flame journey. Because don't forget, the Olympic flame is the actual conduit of all this stopping of aggression. So without that flame, it needs a fair pathway to get there. So why would we want protesters protesting, and wanting to draw attention to amplifying campaigns for humanity and justice? Why would you want that when you need the flame to fan the fires of no aggression from the truce? I don't know. It's all like some weird thing together. So that's happening. And we will be looking forward to, particularly this team at Burn It All Down, to the ways that freedom of expression is suppressed. We saw it in Paris. We're going to see it again. And this is one of the ways. And as much as we talk about freedom of expression and all those things, there is going to be suppression of people trying to speak out on issues related to justice, social justice, and political justice. So this is one of the many things. We haven't even heard about the people talking about Sudan. We haven't even heard it. And I know you're like, the Winter Olympics, why would we talk about Sudan? They don't even participate. But yeah. Anyways, that's a whole other podcast episode.
Linz, who else are we monitoring?
Well, Russia. So surprise, surprise. I mean, you think Winter Olympics, you do think about Russia. Pretty cold there. They've historically been pretty successful in the Winter Olympics. And of course, Sochi happened. Of course, since the invasion of Ukraine, a lot of Russian athletes have not been able to compete in sports. In the last Olympics in Paris, there were Russian teams were not allowed to compete, but there were 15 Russian and 17 Belarusian athletes who were allowed to compete as neutrals. For this Winter Olympics, there is a process to get Russian and Belarusian athletes allowed to compete as neutrals in individual events. Of course, there won't be any in team events such as hockey and things like that, which, is a big deal. Sorry if you're hearing my boyfriend's dog. He's very excited about the podcast and has some thoughts about Russia, apparently. Not a Putin fan. The IOC has allowed a few select athletes to compete individually, but the key is they're supposed to have no connections to military or security organizations, and of course have complied with anti-doping regulations. In winter sports, this is a particularly interesting caveat because a lot of these biathlon and sports like that, and a lot of sports in general, are tied to military participation. So there are right now 5 athletes with Russian pathletes and 1 from Belarus who've been confirmed as eligible for the Olympics. They won't have their national identity or flag or anything next to them. We're used to seeing this like in tennis, but they will, of course, still be able to compete. And not everyone is happy about this. Skeleton athletes from Ukraine, Latvia, and Sweden have staged a demonstration at the European Cup in Austria against the participation of Russians competing as neutrals. In particular, they're mad about one, this is a word I didn't know existed, skeletonist, which I guess is the word for a skeleton athlete. A Russian skeletonist, Vladislav Semyonov, who is on Ukraine's sanctions list because of his affiliation with the Russian Army Sports Club. But he still was given permission to compete in the Olympics as a neutral. So this is not great. There's a lot of consideration. And it's a sensitive subject because our individuals, their governments know, but they're competing right alongside Ukrainian athletes. And it puts the Ukrainian athletes in a really difficult spot. And again, what are we saying about our peacetime mission here?
It's time for the burn pile.
I would love to start. I would like to metaphorically burn the Nigeria Football Association, the Federation of Soccer as it's known in the U.S., in Nigeria for its ongoing refusal and foot dragging to pay their players at all or in a timely manner. And in this particular case, it had to do with the Nigeria Federation not paying the players through the group stages as they entered into quarterfinals. The Nigeria captain, Wilfred Ndidi, promised to pay personally his teammates their outstanding wages because none of the team believed that the government would pay them because it frequently does not. And he promised this before the start of the Africa Cup of Nations quarterfinals because he was so worried that it was messing with their training and their outlook and their conditioning because a lot of those players don't make millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they were very concerned. So Ndidi said, I don't want this unpaid, quote, I don't want this unpaid bonuses situation to affect our preparations, end of quote. And that's pretty pathetic that he had to do that. There are monies coming from FIFA supposedly on the regular and also from the Confederation. And we should know that this is just part of the pattern which affects women even worse. So this is just a quick way to burn the Nigerian FA and also remind everyone that even though it's terrible, the Women's Africa Cup of Nations is coming up in March. And the more that we watch, the more we can pressure this horrible FA into giving them the wages that they deserve. So I want to burn that FA for fucking with its players and wage theft.
Burn.
Thank you.
Okay, Lindsay, what do you have?
I want to burn the so-called Battle of the Sexes that took place about a month ago between Nick Kyrgios and Aryna Sabalenka. Of course, the Battle of the Sexes was a name borrowed from the famous Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs match, which King won in straight sets, and it was a huge amidst her quest to get equal pay at the slams and to start the WTA. It was a big win for women's sport. This was a big loss for women's sport. It was a silly stunt that was borrowing from history. Kyrgios won it 6-3, 6-3. It gave haters of women's tennis yet another data point for them to point to. I've already heard that, I think it's the president of the Russian Tennis Federation, and some are using it as a reason why women shouldn't get equal pay. But it was really a poor showcase for all. It wasn't an entertaining event to watch. It was a stunt, and it was a scam. Kyrgios, we have to mention, not a great ambassador for this. He literally has pled guilty to shoving a former girlfriend on the ground in an argument in 2021. He escaped conviction on the charge of common assault. He's also expressed his opposition to equal pay in tennis. And Aryna Sabalenka, though, deserves a lot of, I think, criticism for her willingness to participate in this. And she's saying she wants to do it again. Kyrgios called the event a great stepping stone for the sport of tennis. And Sabalenka's talking about doing it once more. This is a stunt by their management company. How did they get into this? They share the same management company, Evolve.
Oh, I was wondering.
Who put this on. And I got to say, Aryna Sabalenka, you need to wise up, because what these people are doing is using the popularity of women's tennis and the popularity of your sport to enrich themselves while trying to make you and your sport look lesser than. These are not your friends as much as you think they are, as much as they have convinced you they are. These people are working against what is good for you and what is good for women's tennis, and you are trying to be the cool girl and go along with it, and it is not worth it. And I just want to burn everything about this event, everything about everyone who participated in it, and it's stupid. And I'm mad I even have to talk about it.
Burn.
Jessica?
I love the new show Heated Rivalry, as do lots of people in this world. Created by Jacob Tierney and based on the romance novel of the same name by Rachel Reed, the show is about two closeted gay hockey superstar rivals who have a nearly decade-long secret love affair. Amira and I have an analysis of the show on Bayad's YouTube channel if you're interested. One of the things we discuss is that central to the story is the homophobia of the NHL that keeps the players in the closet. This is no surprise to anyone who follows the NHL or hockey culture in general. The show doesn't go into a lot of detail about this because I think it assumes the viewer understands the homophobic water that these players are swimming in. Heated Rivalry, to say the least, has been a smash hit, well beyond anyone's expectations, including the NHL's. The league has tried to capitalize on this popularity, including teams playing clips of the show or its trailer on the Jumbotron at games, the commissioner, Gary Bettman, saying he binged the show in a weekend, and the league telling The Hollywood Reporter, quote, "There are so many ways to get hooked on hockey, and in the NHL's 108-year history, this might be the most unique driver for creating new fans. See you all at the rink." But please, we should not let the NHL get away with acting like they are cool with gay hockey players or grant them any grace around this. To that end, I want to point our listeners to two written pieces that get at why. The first is a piece by friend of Bayad, Frankie De La Crotas, at their newsletter Out of Your League, titled "Sorry, but I don't give a fuck that the NHL has embraced heated rivalry." Frankie writes that the NHL is one of the most homophobic, anti-queer sports leagues in North America, in part because, quote, "the NHL has pretty swiftly rolled back its embrace of LGBTQ plus advocacy and Pride Nights in the last few years." Frankie goes on, quote, "If they wanted to appeal to a wider audience in order to grow the sport, they could have done so long before a TV show made it impossible for them not to. But they're cowards who feared that speaking up for LGBTQ plus people would cost them their audience, while ironically failing to realize that it might have actually grown it. The audience has been here the whole time, but the league has shown absolutely no interest in appealing to it at all." Thank you, Frankie.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a piece by Andrew on Medium titled, quote, "Time for men's hockey to actually go to the cottage." In the piece, Andrew also catalogs the NHL's superficial embrace of the show, and then he writes, quote, and this is long, but stick with me. "On January 7th, the Ottawa Senators removed any doubt fans might have that heated rivalry, which has already shifted so many cultural norms, would shift anything for men's hockey. The Sens, a team whose season has been undermined by horrible goaltending performances, signed James Reimer? I don't care. A 37-year-old netminder to an AHL PTO during the second intermission of an 8-2 shelling in Colorado. Reimer, who's never been an elite and who was released from a similar contract by the Toronto Maple Leafs in training camp despite their issues in the net, is unlikely to provide a performance better than the team's current options. And it's not his on-ice performances that most hockey fans remember. It's his deliberate and public homophobia that he's known for. Reimer is one of those guys who refused to wear a Pride jersey and used his Christianity to try to excuse away his prejudice. Andrew's piece is incredible and really drives home how hollow all of this positioning of the NHL is. Reimer, a glaring example of it. I look forward to when Gary Bettman learns that the fictional version of the NHL commissioner is the great villain of the sequel to Heated Rivalry. But for now, and until then, I too, alongside Frankie and Andrew, want to burn the NHL's co-opting of a beautiful, wonderful gay hockey story. Burn.
Burn.
Shireen?
I'm actually burning a couple of things. So Brenda and I have been talking about AFCON, the tournament, the continental tournament, the African Cup of Nations, and the final was pretty wild. And it's one of the most chaotic finals.
Bonkers.
Completely that. And we love chaos. I love chaos. This was wild. Now, emanating from all that, not just the play in which Senegal ended up winning 1-0 in extra time, the thing that I specifically want to burn is the treatment by Moroccan media towards Senegal head coach Pepe Thiaw when he went in the post-match presser with his daughter after winning, who's like a wee little thing. She's, I think, 6. And Moroccan media members decided to boo him, refused to interview him, all with his child. Now, I do have to provide context for this. At one point after Senegal had scored, their goal was recalled, and then a penalty was awarded, and Brahim Diaz took it of Morocco. He tried a Panenka, and it didn't work. And Edouard Mendy saved it, Senegal's keeper. So there was chaos. So anyways, at one point, the Senegalese players walked off the pitch for like 10 minutes. And now there's discussions of CAF, which is the Continental Federation, looking into whether that's even acceptable and are threatening. There's allegations and rumors that Senegal, who have won in 2021, could get their title stripped. Morocco was hosts, and quite frankly, they're acting like bullies in every conceivable way. So my problem is specifically with the Moroccan media. I know, as somebody who works literally in Canadian media, and is not necessarily objective when it comes to covering women's ice hockey in international tournaments. I understand that, but I have a job to do, and my biases aren't going to fuck up the way that I do my job, because then I shouldn't even be there, and I don't have a right to be in that space. And I'm so disappointed in the behavior of those journalists and those media members, because this is a match that was really, really in such a most arduous manner won by Senegal, who were the better of the two teams in absolutely that day. And AIPS, which is the International Association of Press Sportif, Sports Press, condemned their actions as well. And I was really happy that they actually put out that statement to say that the behavior of those people, there will be chaos, there will be corruption, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't happen in the press also or by media, but this behavior was atrocious. It was inexcusable, and there needs to be accountability. I think all of those media members who participated in that actually should have their credentials pulled, at least for the next 4 years. There was a Nigerian journalist, and she stood up against them and called them out, and I have a clip of that. The Instagram post is there. Someone filmed in the media room of her speaking out about it, about how unacceptable it was. And I wanted to take that behavior, take those attitudes of entitlement, of anti-Blackness within that context, and to say, look, because we can't pretend that it doesn't exist in Morocco. We know it does. But the behavior of these people, I'm not saying that you shouldn't see color, because that's not a fucking thing. But the reality is that it was just awful. It was the worst thing to happen on top of a series of chaotic events. I want to take that and I want to burn it. Burn.
Okay, I don't want to use the word burn for what I'm going to talk about because it involves arson. And so instead, I'm going to just say, just fucking don't. So that's what I'm going to do. I want to talk about Steven Spencer Pittman. Steven Spencer Pittman is a 19-year-old in Mississippi who is allegedly the person, and I'm using allegedly here because you should legally do that, but the amount of evidence against him is severe already, including the fact that he suffered burns in setting this fire, as well as his Life 360 put him there, and he texted his dad that he'd done research on how to do this. But Pittman who you might see headlines describing him as a college baseball player. It's a community college in Mississippi. You might see headlines talking about his fitness coaching business. More on that in a second. But Pittman last week set a destructive arson fire at the oldest synagogue in Mississippi, in Jackson. At Beth Israel in Jackson, Mississippi, which is a historic site. The fire damaged many Torah scrolls. He said that he wanted to destroy the building due to its Jewish ties. He posted anti-Semitic memes close to the time of the arson. His online history shows that he is part of the far-right groper groups who are trafficking in increasing anti-Semitism. And his online profile also shows that he, in his bios, he describes himself as a fitness and high drive coach who can, quote, help you get shredded, boost testosterone, drive, and discipline. In many ways, his online profile is not shocking to anyone who's been paying attention to the increasing dangerous pockets of communities that are popping up online, especially the alt-right pipeline that is being slid into by teenage boys, that is trafficking in the rise of anti-Semitism, in Islamophobia, in racism, in a shitload of misogyny. And I am just thoroughly disgusted, not only about the destruction of such a historic synagogue in Mississippi, which is a really big deal if you know anything about the history of Jews in the U.S. South, especially in Mississippi, but also the way that, you know, the various coverages of this felt like, again, a baseball player, and here's a picture of him playing baseball, and here's his stats, which, by the way, are non-existent. Like, it's not even worth to put any numbers in because he's not good at baseball. And yet his profile as a baseball player and a fitness coach and all this stuff is right there alongside of his horrific actions. And I also think that it just demonstrates how these online communities, not only the danger in them, but when we talk about stuff like the discourse around like fitness coaches and alpha male ideology and all this stuff, this is like, you can look at his profile, like that's what it is. And I'm just frankly disgusted by his actions and moreover what he represents. And I just want to say, just fucking don't.
Don't.
Fucking don't.
Fucking don't.
It's time to talk about who's leading the way through this bleak, dark world. Let's name some torchbearers. Jess, kick us off.
Texan Amber Glenn won her third consecutive U.S. figure skating championship, putting her on the U.S. Olympic team. She won it last year, too, making her the first back-to-back female champion since Michelle Kwan in 2005. Glenn, who is pansexual, becomes the first openly queer woman on the U.S. figure skating team.
Next, we have another Texan. Houston Texan Aziz Al-Sher is a American football player. He was fined by the NFL for wearing eye black. That said, stop the genocide. Now, he was fined $11,593 American, which is so much money. And his response was, I understand it's fine. It's bigger than me. It makes people uncomfortable. Imagine how those people feel. There's people dying. I'm a human being and I care. That kind of role model, that kind of person who's unapologetic and consistent in showing humanity is unbelievable.
Texas A&M won their first NCAA volleyball championship ever. To do so, they had to take down 3 of the number 1 seeds in a row. They defeated the then undefeated and overall number 1 seed Nebraska on Nebraska's home court. They swept Pitt in the Final Four, the only time any team this season had swept Pitt. They then faced their SEC foe, Kentucky, in the final, swept them too. It was a remarkable run and should have been a huge story. Congratulations to the A&M volleyball team, the 2025 national champions.
Woohoo! I want to give a shout out to Lindsay Heckcox and Becky Pepper Jackson, a trans woman and a trans girl whose cases suing their states, Idaho and West Virginia, to let them participate in sports, made it all the way to the Supreme Court on January 13th. Of course, we can only imagine how the justices will rule, but kudos to these women and girl athletes and amazing people for fighting for protection for all trans women and girls to be able to participate in sports like they should be.
I want to shout out Raphaël Toussignon, who is a Canadian women's para-hockey player and was gunning to be the first woman named to the Paralympic hockey team. Found out a couple months ago she actually has breast cancer and is fighting that currently. And her prognosis she shared with the world on her Instagram. She's doing really, really well. And I just want to shout her out because she's a phenomenal human and we're rooting for her.
I want to shout out Avenada Kimasura, which is the Greenland Dog Sledding Association, who holds their annual event in March or April of every year. Last year, they made headlines because they disinvited the envoy from the United States amidst all of the shit happening. They did it again this year after finding out that a Trumpian, Jeff Landry, the governor, was sent by the United States to this event, and they found it out and they publicly disinvited them. And I just want to shout out people who see people trying to use sport to engage in soft power politics and performance and say, fuck that, you will not do that here.
I'm up next. I'm going to shout out Abby Murphy, who is not Canadian, who is an American hockey player named to the Olympic.
Upset of the day.
Upset of the wild, day. Who is named to the U.S. women's Olympic hockey team, who will be in Milano Cortina, is a Minnesota Gopher player and has probably what I think is one of the most amazing assists that I've ever seen in hockey. Again, even though she's American, that led to a goal. And it's just something to behold, to watch. Like, it's not only like puck handling, like juggling almost, like you would a soccer ball. It's wild. Perfect pass to then be finished. I was in awe.
A nutmeg.
It was a puck handling, then nutmeg, and like literally almost using soccer terms here, and then pass to be finished. It was exquisite. It looked like sorcery, and I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Loved it.
And can I get a drum roll, please? Brenda, who's our torchbearer?
It is Layla Edwards, who will become the first Black woman to represent Team USA in ice hockey at the Winter Olympics. We wanted to save her for this special place. We're definitely all going to be looking for her to do great things.
That's it for this episode of Burn It All Down. If you're a fan of the show, please remember to support our Kickstarter. It's live now, and help us spread the word about it. We only have 30 days to hit our goal of $10,000, which would bring us back for more episodes in 2026. The more money we can raise beyond that, the more episodes we'll produce. You can contribute to the Kickstarter via the link in the show notes. This episode was produced by Martin Kessler. Lauren Croft does our social media. You can find Burn It All Down on Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Facebook. And now we are also on YouTube. Please go subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any bonus content. And we've already generated a lot of it. We recently posted Shireen and Brenda's breakdown of AFCON semifinals, and Jessica and I had a great analysis of heated rivalry. If you want to subscribe to Burn It All Down, you can do so on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, TuneIn, all the places. And for information on the show, check out our website, burnitalldownpod.com, and subscribe to our new newsletter, The Flamethrower, via the link in our show notes. That's the best way to keep up with all of the Biad news. And as always, burn on and not out. And we'll see you soon, Flamethrowers.
Woo!